Thanks, Jack, for asking me to be here. It's an honor. It really is. I'm excited. I'm nervous. My kids call it nerve-sighted. I like that. And I was thinking, while we were supposed to be having a minute of silence, and my brain was not at all silent, that I'm here and I don't really want to be here. Not because I don't love most of you people. I know so many of you. That's so joyful to me. Just because I get nervous. And I don't have to act on the feelings that I have today, which is just miraculous for me, because I can't tell you how many times I've just sort of, decided I didn't want to. I don't need to. I don't like it. I don't want to be uncomfortable, and so therefore I will avoid, run away, etc. Ultimately drink. I'm sorry, I didn't start with my official qualification. So my name is Greg. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and I've been through the process. I have some experience with these steps as they're laid out in the book, Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, with the help of 2 Big Book Step Study sponsors. Meetings like these, people like you, a loving higher power who I've come to not understand very well, and I have made most of my amends. I have some left to make, living in the latter steps and all the principles to the best of my willingness on a daily basis. Merry Christmas. All right. So we're going to talk about the first part of step 1 today. This reading right here changed my life. I know it seems elementary to say step 1 comes before the other steps, but it really does. If you don't understand that yet, or if you think you got a way around it, or if you're not really sure what step 1 is, sooner or later you'll be faced with it. And you'll have an opportunity. I had so many opportunities early on in my life. Every time I looked in the refrigerator and stared down the beer and was like, yeah, but it's only 10 a.m., not yet. And then went back 10 minutes later and was like, not yet, okay? That essentially is the phenomenon of craving in short order kicking in. Like, I've got alcohol in my system, and my system wants more alcohol, and it has nothing to do with my brain, and it has nothing to do with my morality. It is a physical thing. And, I was 19, and I was asking myself whether or not I was an alcoholic. Before I was 16, and my parents were sending me to counseling to find out whether or not I was an alcoholic. And I was like lying to the counselor at 16 years old. How much do you drink? Some, couple beers on the weekends, and I didn't know. My wife taught me this, that as a nurse, whenever they hear an addict tell them how much they use, they cut it in half, and every time they hear an alcoholic tell them how much they drink, they triple it. Because we protect our disease, and I'm not trying to differentiate between alcoholics and addicts. I am both. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. I put anything in my body, and the same stuff goes wrong. Anyway, so I ended up here because my wife left me when I was 27. That was 1993. And she didn't come back, which disappointed me because that was my objective. And I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I had to concede at that point that I drank a lot, and that sometimes I passed out in places I shouldn't, and, needed to be picked up and brought other places. But none of that really mattered to me, I guess to some extent I just wanted to save my marriage. So I quit drinking, and when you quit drinking, you go to AA. That's what I knew. So that's what I did. And I went to lots of meetings, and I did what I was told, which was don't drink, go to meetings, ask for help, take on commitments, show up, shake hands, get a job, ashtrays, brooms, and chairs. Yeah, that's a long time ago, isn't it? And I stayed sober for a very long time. And I got a life. I did all sorts of really good things in the material world. I ended up learning how to ride a motorcycle and been riding for ever since. Learned how to play guitar, recorded some songs, played some gigs. That was great with my younger brother. Went back to college, went to grad school, got a degree, got a career, became a college professor. That's not so great, but it is what it is. It's getting harder. It's getting harder to be a teacher. Anyway, so all those good things happened, and I got busy, and I met a girl, and she wasn't the reason why I left Alcoholics Anonymous. I was already out because you people kept getting crazier and crazier, and so the program that I understood obviously wasn't working for me, and I had no idea. I met this girl. I asked her to marry me 3 weeks later. We got married 3 months later. We're still married today, but it isn't because I made a good decision. It is simply because I think we did a lot of work. And by the time I got here again, all that work had been undone, and we had to start over again. So again, I think a failing marriage was part of what contributed to my returning to Alcoholics Anonymous. Anyway, I'm trying to get to step one. So I was absolutely crazy. I did not know it. She would tell me regularly in our first year of marriage that I was the angriest person she ever met, and the only thing I could come back with was, well, if you were married to you, That didn't fly. We stayed married. We had 2 daughters a few years into the marriage, and about a year after my second daughter was born, I started taking painkillers post-surgery, and I remember, to go back to Jim's story with drinking the whiskey and the milk. I remember being none too smart. I remember that moment when I'm looking at that bottle of pills right after my surgery, and I'm like, this is gonna end badly. I knew it. I knew it. I didn't get it. I didn't get alcoholism, but I knew I was one. And so that's where this becomes really important. I took the pills. I used them. I got creative with interpreting the prescription. Soon enough, I had another surgery, and I had back problems, and I'm sleeping on the floor, and I got a running script for painkillers. And every once in a while, I would pretty much run out of pills because I wasn't very good at math, and I wanted more. And I would be like, I can't wait till I have to have another surgery. I'm serious. Like, what's going to happen next that I get to go back to the doctor and get a little bump on my prescription? And then I couldn't find any more. And my daughters were at this point, I think, 4 and 6 or thereabouts. And I came home from work, and I had to pick the kids up at gymnastics. They were both in gymnastics. And I walked into the dining room for God knows what reason, and I found a bottle of vodka. And I had been 22 years without a drink at that point. I'd been high on painkillers for 5 years. In my crazy mind, that didn't seem to count. But then I drank. And there was nothing in the world that was going to stop me from drinking in that moment. I knew it. I walked into the room. I saw the bottle. I was like, uh-oh. I walked out of the room, I walked back in, I walked back out, I walked back in. It was the same thing as looking at the refrigerator when I was 19. Now, I had painkillers in my system. It says in this chapter, alcohol in any form. I'll consider that alcohol in one form or another. Anything that affects my mind. I know probably a chemist would disagree with me, but I don't need to be a chemist to understand how these things work on my body. So I wanted something, and there was no stopping me. Problem is, I had to go get my kids. And the only thing I had left, there's a phrase in the book, a couple of chapters ahead, pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. And I understand that to mean when you have given away the last thing that you think made you okay, right? Removal of my moral goodness. That was the thing that I gave away. And all I had left at that point, I wasn't doing a good job as an employee. I wasn't a good husband. I thought I was protecting my kids pretty well. I thought I was a pretty good dad. And then I had to go pick them up while drunk, talk to grown-up people, and take the risk of physically harming my kids if anything went wrong with my driving. And I mean, I had a lot of practice, but it had been a long time since I drove drunk. Nothing happened, but that was kind of the moment that really was for me that step one encounter where I was faced with the decision, drink or don't drink. And that was my phone the whole time. It's all right, buddy. You gotta go. We're good. I was like, what the hell? Drink or don't drink, and I chose drink, and there was nothing I could do about it. Anyway, so around that time, actually, probably about a month before that time, I said my first real third step prayer. I was on my way to work, and it was simple. Do what you got to do, God. And it was the most honest prayer I'd ever made, and I was fully aware. I was terrified, and I was fully aware that I had no idea what God had in store for me if I gave myself to Him. And I think if anything, this is where years of Alcoholics Anonymous osmosis might have helped me, because I learned some stuff. I didn't do the work. I learned some stuff. And I learned that going to God ultimately was kind of the solution. And so that was what I did in that time. And eventually He brought me to a drink. Thank you. Right? A month later, the wheels were totally off, and I called a friend, and he brought me to the book, which led me to Big Book meetings, which led me to a Big Book Step Study sponsor who made me go to this kind of meeting. It was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. But the doctor's opinion, I'm sorry I took so long to get here. The phenomenon of craving, I never understood. I always thought it meant withdrawal. And what it is very simply is once you drink, you want more. It's not what happens when you don't drink, it's what happens when you do drink. And for me, that means all bets are off once I get started. Now, the principle of step one is honesty. And so what is it I need to be honest about? And on page 23, I hate to jump around, but this is what my brain does. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. This is what I do. This is my brain as an untreated alcoholic. What's the game? Power over alcohol. Okay? That's what the game, somehow, I'm going to figure out a way to beat this thing. Now, for me, I found a great way. Join Alcoholics Anonymous and do what they tell you, accept the steps. Stay sober. Try to live a normal life. Try to be a normal person. Somebody told me somewhere along the lines, if you want to live a normal life, spend time with normal people and do what they do. It made perfect sense to me, so that's what I did. Except I'm not one of those. It says to us here in this reading today, if I can find it. I don't know if I can even find it. I'm not going to be able to find it. Now I'm getting stressed out. You see what you people are doing to me? It says they're not normal. Paraphrase. They're not normal, right? And it's on a physical level, not just a mental level. It says the mental problem's not enough to keep me sober. I have to understand that I am absolutely biologically different than other people. All right? And that, for me, when I understood that, says that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. If you don't ever have the phenomenon of craving, according to Dr. Silkworth, you are not an alcoholic. And so I was like, well, I do. So that means I am. End of debate. End of debate. For some reason, I could play mental games with myself about how bad I am, about how bad I'm not. But this is really clear cut. Either you are or you're not. Either this happens or it doesn't. If it does, you're doomed. These are the words in the book. Doomed. So I was brought in here and we started at the beginning of the book. I mean page 0, where it says, this is how much you know about alcoholism. And from there forward, and when I started reading with someone who had read this stuff before, who had studied it the way that we study it here, the pages opened up, the words became meaningful. I realized what I already knew. And thank God that God brought me to another drink, because then I had the experience to support what the book explained. Because to this point, before I took that last drink, I thought I had it figured out. I really did. I quit drinking. I didn't ask God for help quitting drinking. I quit drinking. And then I went to AA. And then I chose to do this and I chose to do that. And without getting into the debate about what is or isn't free will, it was me. And I wasn't aware of it. I thought I was doing everything right. But ultimately, I was not willing enough to do the work that needs to be done for that spiritual change to happen. Then I drank. Then I was confronted. I was beaten to a point of hopelessness, as this book says many times, not just in Silkworth's reading. That's what we need before we become willing. And then I became willing. And then I caught fire and I did all this stuff. And it took a long time and it was a lot of work. And if you wonder if it's worth it, well, I'm nerve-sighted. I'm happy to be here, but going to meetings, it doesn't always work like that. Going to work, I blew off a meeting not long ago, a work meeting, because I didn't feel like dealing with it. I am not fully recovered on a minute-to-minute basis. I need this stuff all the time. But I don't have to act on my emotions today. I don't have to succumb to my own irrational thinking just because I'm having it. And that's a discipline that I learned through the work in the steps. And I wouldn't have done any of that. None of it, not one lick. And I proved this over the course of 15 years in AA, not doing the work, if I didn't think I really needed to. Okay? Because it's life or death, and worse. It's worse than life or death. It's my kid's death. It's my friend's death. It's the destruction of everything good in my life. If I, not drink, if I stay an untreated alcoholic. That's what I got on step 1 tonight, at least the first part of step 1 tonight, this morning, whatever day it is. Merry Christmas. God bless you. Welcome, God, brother.